Let me introduce our keynote speaker for the inaugural session today. We have Mr. Sanjay Podder, Managing Director and Research and Development Head of Accenture Labs. Sanjay is an Eisenhower Fellow and Managing Director for Accenture Labs in Bangalore. He operates out of Bangalore and Mumbai. He leads the company's software engineering RD and has a global responsibility for the lab's Tech for Good program. He's going to share a lot of Tech for Good program to us. He's also a member of the Accenture's Technology Leadership Council. At Accenture Lab, he leads an experienced team of data scientists and software engineering experts responsible for research and development, including application of data science and artificial intelligence in software analytics and automation. In addition, he has responsibility for driving research in self-adaptive software, machine and deep learning software systems, blockchain. Sanjay is passionate about using the combinatorial power of technology for building a more inclusive and sustainable world. He believes that as a software engineering research, he can solve some of the greatest challenges facing humans, such as future of work, healthcare, gender equality, education, and nature conservation with data science, digital, and design thinking. He's a technology mentor for several social entrepreneurs, change makers, and startups. Sanjay has been instrumental in building a powerful, open innovation ecosystem for joint R&D with leading academics and institutions in India and abroad. He is a governing council member of the NASSCOM Center of Excellence. Sanjay is an alumnus of the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. He holds a bachelor degree in computer engineering and a master's degree in marketing management from Mumbai University. Let's put our hands together for Sanjay Podder.
Thank you, Sanjay. So thank you everyone, and I believe I'm audible right till the end. Perfect. And this, I think, probably a weekend for many of you, and you have made your time to be here and listen to me. Thanks for that. As Sandeep mentioned, I will at times even digress because I know there are a lot of students here, and one of my intention is to give you a broad picture as to what's happening in the technology world. What is it that we are trying to do in the lab which I lead, and how do I see technology solving some of the hardest problems faced by man. So that would be my intent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and one of the characteristics of the fourth industrial revolution is that whatever you do, whatever profession you are in, you will need to master the art of working with the machines. And these machines take a lot of different forms. They can be the bots you see in movies, the robots you see in movies, they can be the Siris in your iPhone, they can be the Amazon Echoes, they can be insights you get right in your laptop, and you'll hear a lot more about it. But in the fourth industrial revolution, what is really going to happen is that quote-unquote smart people, and I'm going to talk a little bit more on that aspect. Smart people, or smart mind, when they come in contact with smart machines, the whole world as we know, we end up reinventing and reimagining the world. Every single business, every single industry is undergoing a massive disruption because of this technology. So the World Economic Forum calls this the fourth industrial revolution. And let's try and understand, what does this fourth industrial revolution really mean? What's the role of technology in this? And how is it going to disrupt everything that we know of? So it looks like I have to be here to change the slide. Now, one of the things that came out of the survey that we did with the World Economic Forum is the kind of value it will add to the economy. So the fourth industrial revolution that we are talking about, it is estimated to generate $100 trillion of value globally over the next decade, till 2025. I'll be spending some time in this particular slide trying to explain to you what is really happening. We call this exponential technologies, and it's very clear why we call it exponential technology. You can see the exponential curves. And what this is trying to depict is that over the years, the society, mankind, or the humans are getting more and more influenced and impacted with a number of technologies. I was talking to Sanjay just before the start, and he was mentioning the mainframe days. And in those mainframe days, the mainframe computers were phenomenally expensive, but the kind of computing power they had was much, much lower than the smartphones that you have right now in your pocket. And to give you a sense of the order of difference in the computing power, the Apollo mission to the moon, if you compare the onboard computer, the computing power of the onboard computer, to an iPhone, the difference is 120 million times the iPhone is more powerful. In other words, the iPhone can on its own send 120 million space missions compared to what happened in 1969. So you can see how these technologies are evolving. It's evolving at an exponential order. And when the internet came into play, suddenly all of us started having access to connectivity. We were able to contact anybody in the planet. It kind of democratized the whole access. You didn't need anymore your own networks. Earlier, people or companies used to invest in a lot of their money, in building their own networks. Suddenly, the internet made access look so easy. And then we have this famous Moore's law. Many of you may be aware of it, where every 2 years, the number of transistors you can pack in an IC doubles. And what that really means is your electronic devices, your chips are getting smaller and smaller and more powerful. In fact, you will have chips embedded in your own body, in your cornea, and where all, So the ICs becoming more dense also means that the cost of storage has plummeted. The cost of computing has plummeted. It's so easy to get computing power. It's so easy to get, use storage at almost zero cost, right? How many of us kind of end up putting loads of pictures and videos at no cost in the social media? You don't even think about it. Just imagine. And I have personally visited the so-called cloud, which we talk about. I've been to Seattle, I've personally visited the Azure cloud, and you'll be surprised the scale at which these infrastructures have been built. And to a point that Sandeep made earlier about the CIOs, a big work of every CIO earlier was running the data centers of their own organizations. Today, you don't have to. You can have your own private cloud, your own hybrid cloud, your public cloud. You don't really, I've personally driven multi-year projects to shut down all the data centers my organization used to run across the globe and consolidate into the cloud, right? It's cheaper, it's reliable, it's faster, you can upgrade, it's resilient, is everything, right? So what has happened is you now have access to the internet, you started having access to cheap, high quality data storage and high quality computing, what we call as a cloud. And once that happened, the other big revolution that has happened is the advent of mobility, mobile phones. Huge amount of computing power in each one of our pockets, and also in the rural areas. As you see, in rural areas, there's a good penetration of mobility. So suddenly, your computing is spreading out. Every people are having access to storage, internet, and all this technology, and I'm going to talk a little bit more on this technology, is actually the right ingredient, the right thing you need to build an inclusive world. So what do you really mean by an inclusive world? So if I just take a step back and I say, I look at the world around us, never before did we have so many of us in this planet. The October 2017 report says we are some 7.4 billion of us in this planet. But at the same time, as we keep adding more billions, the world is not remaining sustainable anymore. It's not inclusive anymore. And one of the very startling statistics to prove that point is this year in Jan, when Oxfam reported that the 8 richest people in this planet, they have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the human pyramid. So 8 people, they have more wealth than the 3.6 billion people in the bottom of the pyramid. And what it really means that part of the pyramid is unrepresented. When you don't have wealth, nobody listens to you. You're unrepresented. You don't have access to healthcare. You don't have access to education. You are marginalized. And so this is not a simple problem when I compare 8 people with 3.6 billion people. So such exponential hard problems cannot have your regular solution. You need tools that smart people will use, tools and technology to solve those problems. And one of the silver lining in the dark cloud is the kind of technologies we are talking about. So I come back to the technology element. So you suddenly see that you have now these technologies that can allow people, even in the rural areas, to have access to computing, to access to storage, to access to internet connectivity, and that is a very positive thing. The other thing that is happening is once you have access to storage, cheap storage, and the advent of low-cost sensors, so there are more sensors around us than we even know of. Your cell phone has many, many sensors. When you walk every day, it exactly tells you how many steps you have taken, for example. Right? So there are so many sensors all around us. And for the first time, what differentiates the 4th industrial revolution compared to all the earlier revolutions, the digital revolution where you saw e-commerce happening, for example, is that for the first time, we people are not the only people in the internet. The internet is no longer belongs only to humans. In fact, the internet is now being flooded with data by machines. And these are the sensors, right? These are machines that monitor your health, these are machines that monitor your car, these are machines that can monitor environment, can monitor anything, and these machines are pouring data into the internet. These machines are able to talk to each other, the sensors are able to talk to each other. We are actually getting outnumbered in the internet for the first time as humans. And when you get outnumbered, now what is happening in the 4th industrial revolution, therefore, is a play of the mind and the machine. And it is for the first time an opportunity to reimagine everything you do. Reimagine education. This is a beautiful educational institution. You have to reimagine the way you define content, the way you deliver the content. Your students, because we have traditionally been not very inclusive in every aspect of life. You want to study, you have to go through a lot of entrance examination just to prove that you are qualified or you can study. And then education is so expensive, at least in the United States, at least in India we are not that bad, but students end up taking loans and for studies, and even when they are doing their jobs, they are still under debt, right? So now with these technologies, for example, you have this massive MOOCs, you have these edXs of the world, your content is being crowdsourced from the best of the minds, and suddenly, some of the best content, say in Coursera or in edX or in Udemy, and you name it, is available to you. And this is an example how these technologies are really helping you. And a lot of things are happening in that space. I just gave you a high-level example. So now, once you start having all this data, and Sandeep, you are going to stop me because I can just keep going on and on. I don't have a timer to know how I'm doing on time. So once you have all this data, what do you think happens next? Artificial intelligence. And I think many of you are hearing about this term, especially the students are smiling. They are hearing about AI everywhere, right? And why do you think AI is suddenly so much in vogue? Why is everybody talking about AI? Because AI is actually not new. It's more than 50 years old. In fact, other than the deep learning algorithms, nothing in AI that we do today is probably as recent. But AI went into a deep winter. And the reason AI went into a deep winter is that to do AI, you need massive computation power. You need massive amount of data, right? You have to learn, the way machines learn is very different than we humans. We humans, in some sense, score over the machines because we are artificial general intelligence, right? And we can connect the dots more easily than machines can. But machines are more narrowly focused. Once they know how to do a certain job, they are much better than us. But to train those machines, you need massive amount of data. You have to give those data to the machines, you have to show them examples of what has happened in the past. There are different techniques of machine learning where in supervised, human beings tell the machine that this is what happened. Like if I take an example of financial inclusion, this particular person has defaulted on the loan repayment X, and person Y has also defaulted, person Z has also defaulted, and then the machine internally runs algorithm to figure out, okay, these kind of people have these kind of characteristics, and therefore it is able to figure out whether a person A is going to default or not, right? So machines have to be trained. In the artificial intelligence, machines have to be trained. And obviously there are other techniques where you don't need to train machines. They have limitations. I'm not going to go into those aspects. We'll go a bit more deeper into technology. But largely machines or machine learning, this field has supervised learning, this field has unsupervised learning, and it has deep learning. And the deep learning is a more dangerous kind of powerful technique, because in deep learning, traditionally we have been coding the computers, right? We give instructions to the computers. We write the code and the computer executes. We are the master and the computer is the slave. But deep learning changes the equation. Deep learning, you don't code. Deep learning, the computer writes its own code. The computer observes and writes its own code, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit more on this aspect, because why is it very interesting for humanity? And then, because you now have data, for the first time you are doing AI, and AI has come out of the AI winter, it is becoming reality. I actually have brought the Amazon Echo with me. I was planning to do a joint session with Echo today, but there's no Wi-Fi, I guess, in the auditorium, so it's still in my bag. But what is really happening is another area of NLP, of AI, is natural language processing. And what is natural language processing? It's all about the ability of AI systems to understand us humans or interact with us humans in a natural way. Now, how do we talk? We talk in English. We write down in a piece of paper. We document out a text, for example. But when you're talking to a computer, unfortunately, it doesn't understand all that. You have to tell the computer, give specific instructions, enter specific data. But that was the past. Today, one of the big shifts happening is the power of natural language processing, conversational agents. So in a very near future, what will happen, and you will see this happening very fast. In fact, already the Echo is in India. Some of you can buy from Amazon. You just talk to Echo. You say, hey, what's the news today? What's the weather now? What's the meaning of this? What do you know about this topic? Right? Can you switch off the light? Can you switch on the light? So, and then you know about the Teslas of the world. You can give verbal instructions to park the car. So very soon you will be talking to technology. Technology is going to adapt to you. You don't have to learn a new, especially the elderly, they always struggle with technology. Well, which button do I press? What do I do? Okay, I don't like this technology. But that is changing because of AI. What is really going to happen is technology will adapt to us. It's a people-first world. We are in the center. These technologies are going to adapt to us, right? Now, because of that, we are very, very soon. It's not a future Star Trek kind of idea, but very, very soon what you will see is you walk into your room, you just tell your television, play me NDTV channel. You don't go and reach out to a mobile a remote and say, okay, what was the number of the NDTV channel, right? And everything is conversational. The world suddenly changes, for example. So AI brings in a lot of power. It gives you power to build systems which can sense the world in a very natural way. These systems, they understand what you are trying to say, they comprehend. These systems can respond back to you. And finally, these systems learn. One of the most important aspects, therefore, about AI systems are they learn. So today, if you ask the system something and it doesn't have as much information or no information, you'll be surprised after a few days when you ask the same question, the system is able to respond to you. They learn, right? So a little bit of primer on AI to make you understand what is happening there. And then the other big technology that is coming is blockchain, right? And you hear a lot of blockchain. In fact, it's being projected as the next big thing. Blockchain and Bitcoin, people talk almost as if they are the same thing. Bitcoin is more like an implementation of blockchain. Maybe in this forum, the Bitcoin is of much more relevance, but blockchain, for the first time, just like the internet does not belong to anyone, blockchain does not belong to any single entity. And the blockchain is like a global database. It's not just like your application's own database that you control. And when it becomes a global database, it allows you to put in proof of work, right? You can put in, okay, an activity has happened, you put it in the blockchain. What makes it very interesting is it is immutable. So when you put the proof of work in the blockchain, nobody can change it. Theoretically, you can change, but the computation power required is so huge that nobody can go and change a block in the blockchain. Now, a thing like this suddenly becomes very interesting in multiple scenarios, and I'm going to talk about some scenarios down the line so that you can understand how you can use it. But one of the scenarios you are all aware of is Bitcoins, which is again blockchain, okay? But when implemented in the context of the financial world, the new currency. Bitcoins as a store of value is really taking up. There are still some challenges with Bitcoins, as its ability to, recently there was a Wired article on how much does it cost to buy a pizza with Bitcoin, because it's very difficult to use Bitcoin and buy something in the market today. It doesn't scale today. It has about 3 to 7 transactions a second, and you compare it with the MasterCards of the world and all, Bitcoin systems don't scale today. But however, it can be a good store of value. So you buy Bitcoin and then you sell Bitcoin. And Bitcoins are here to stay, and you'll see a lot of interesting things happening there. But the reason I brought about Bitcoin is also to point to the fact that there's still a need to have tremendous computation power, because, as I said, the Bitcoin systems, they don't really scale. 7 transactions a second, that doesn't really mean much. How do you really exponentially change the computing power of our computers? You change that by challenging the fundamentals of our computing system, and the fundamentals of our computing system are bits and bytes. Okay, so now you are talking about quantum computers. So all of you guys, you will know about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It's not, you cannot say an electron is here or there, it is in some, and you cannot at the same time say where it is and where it is going. But you look at the quantum computers have quantum states, and these are rapidly developing fields. They will bring tremendous computational power, right? So going back to this chart, what you see is the tsunamis are hitting us, but now they are hitting us faster. If you see the gap between the tsunamis, the technology tsunamis, they are rapidly shrinking, and the impact is exponential. And the most important part is when all this technology come together, in isolation they are powerful, but when they come together in combination, the combinatorial power of these technologies are immense. So if you can bring a blockchain and an AI and an IoT to play, you can disrupt banking, you can disrupt insurance, you can disrupt retail, you can disrupt education, you can disrupt healthcare, you can disrupt everything, right? And that is what is happening today, okay? So that's about the technology. Okay, so because of this combinatorial power of technology, a lot of interesting things are happening around us, as I just described. One, about digital natives, and all of you who have kids at home, or even the millennials who have, people who are born with technology, they can very easily relate to technology. The kids who are, it's not like digital immigrants like me. I didn't have a computer when I was studying in school. But all the people who are born now, or born after 2000, they take to technology as fish takes to water. They are the digital natives. For them, even before they know how to read A, B, C, D, or numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, they are playing games, right? So they are very much adapted to technology. And as I discussed, technology is changing. It is coming towards the human being. It is getting conversational. It's trying to learn our language, right? So, when technology starts working, what happens? Technology disappears. You won't even know that there is technology, because it is all around us. It's all pervasive. And that was the point I was trying to make with Sandeep, that the success of digital or these technologies is, it's not going to be confined to the CIO's office. The CEO is empowered, the CMO is empowered, every single person in the business, in the society, they're empowered with this technology. How many of us are now used to Paytm? Maybe after the Prime Minister demonetized, and suddenly everybody started going towards the Paytm, and or the Bhim app, the UPI. So when these technologies start working, they disappear because they're just part of our everyday life, right? And we are looking at a situation where the technologies are becoming part of our DNA. And what this is therefore allowing you to do for the first time, with the help of this technology, you can penetrate the billions, which were untouched by the market forces. You are now able to reach or crowdsource your model. You are able to, for example, an artisan in a village can now sell his product in Amazon. Or a teenager in a tier 2, tier 3 city can be working in a BPO. right? Suddenly, there is a reach, there's an access to the billion who were untouched earlier, right? So this whole thing about gig economy is happening, or shared economy, and a crowdsourced economy. The other thing that is happening is the concept of platform economy. And one of the good examples in the Indian context is the JAM, the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile platform. And then, for example, once you have a platform like this, which has all the data, suddenly people will start creating interesting apps on top of it. Like if you are giving microcredit to people in the bottom of the pyramid who don't have credit ratings, you do have other data points based on which, maybe what I was listening to, the timeliness of paying the electricity bill, the timeliness of paying the credit card bill, the mobile bills. There may be various other factors based on which you can take a qualified credit rating for somebody who's today not in the formal, credit rating portion at all. So you for the first time, you're able to take a qualified decision whom do you give the microcredit or not. So a lot of interesting things are going to happen in the next point of evolution. People are working on that when these kind of platforms come up. And the long-term marketing is, because of this technology suddenly, it's no longer one size fits all. A good example would be earlier you read a book, you go to a bookstore, a neighborhood bookstore, whatever is there, you just look at it. If you need a book, you tell him to see whether he can get you one. If you want to read a rare book, there's no way you can get access to it. Today you just go to the Amazon Kindle, you buy any book you want. If you're taking it in Kindle, you get it in a second, download it, read it. So it's not about just catering to a part of the pyramid. Anybody can read anything, and so businesses, society, government, they can fine-tune their products and services to meet the needs of the entire pyramid. So these technologies are therefore forcing businesses, society, government to relook and reimagine their code. Okay, every business, they're relooking and reimagining the code because of all these technologies. Okay, I did touch upon this, how the machines have come in. Now, for the first time, therefore, United Nations Global Compact, they have come up with this beautiful chart of some of the 17 very hard problems for mankind. They are called the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, what I really like about these goals is that they're not appealing to you from a philanthropic mindset, saying, please do something for hunger, please do something for health, please do something for gender equality. They are pushing this not as a corporate social responsibility, but as a corporate social opportunity. What they're saying is, with the help of technology, for the first time, you can solve or address these hard problems. And you know what? If you are able to solve these problems, it is win-win for all, because they project that by 2030, this is going to add $12 trillion to the economy and going to create 377 million jobs, right? So this is kind of a roadmap the whole world is following, including India, on the Sustainable Development Goals. So from my lab perspective, we work a lot with non-profits who are trying to address these goals, and we try to see how can we empower them with technology so that they are even more successful than what they can do otherwise. So these are some of the areas you can see how these technologies will change the way we live and the way we work, right? Whether it is the environment, the social inclusion, the economic inclusion, you look at the productivity, employment, skills, learning methods, how do you reskill people, especially in a country like India, it becomes very important. Okay, in fact, one of our study, if you look at the whole aspect of the way we live, the way we work, for example, one of the study that we did in Accenture pointed out to the kind of top skills you will need to be relevant at work in the next 5 years. Obviously, you need to have a good understanding of technical skills. You have to be agile, your ability to learn at a fast pace, to change and learn new things. In fact, the concept of career will take a beating. We normally today, say that I am a computer guy and all my life I'm doing computer, or you're a finance guy, all your life you're doing finance. But what's really going to happen is, in the next generation, people are going to learn, they are going to learn fast, and they are going to change jobs fast or change their career fast. And why is that so? Because most of the jobs, in fact, a recent study that was in the Economic Times a couple of days back, it says 9% of the workforce in India, I think the year they pointed out was 2022, which is not very far away. 9% of the workforce in India will be doing work which is not yet defined, for which we don't even know. So in the next 4-5 years, 9% of the workforce, 27% of the workforce will be doing work which will significantly change. Right? And so you can, in fact, one of the very popular saying is, we are educating people for the future, for a work that we don't even know. So you really are looking at a very dynamic period of our human history, where you have to be extremely agile to pick up new skills. And the last one is very interesting, your ability to work with machines. And I just want to warn you here, the machines here don't really mean the robots necessarily. Your ability to work with intelligent systems. They can take various shapes, forms, they can be hardware, they can be software, but you will be augmented. And there is always a lot of discussions around job loss. In many forums, there is always discussions around job loss. I think the biggest challenge the society is going to see is not lack of jobs. It's actually going to be lack of skills, because the nature of your job will demand a much more higher skills from you. Your ability to work in unison with the machines, your ability. So it's for all of us who have studied Maslow's need hierarchy, we work to fulfill our need. So as you fulfill a need at a lower level, we kind of move to the next level. So now the lower level needs are all going to be automated out. You move to the higher level needs and you need to be augmented. Because if I have to do a higher level job, either I get skilled more, which I have to, or I have to be augmented. I have to get those insights. And a good example is Uber. So, I've been traveling in Uber in India, US, all over the world, and I've realized one thing. The Uber is the best example of augmentation of man and machine. For one, the Uber drivers, unlike the erstwhile rickshaw drivers, they don't know any of the roads. They're blind as a bat. You just go and say, okay, where do you want to go? They fit it into the system, Uber system, they drive. They don't care whether it's the right road, wrong road, but they will go as per the Uber app. And for example, that's the level of augmentation that has happened. What is the next ride he has to take? The machine decides based on various factors, how many hours he has worked, what is the location of the car. If he's driving very fast, he gets an alert. So there are a lot of sensors in the car and the driver and the machine. The Uber app is deciding, should he be getting the next ride or not? Is he behaving properly or not? It's like the Big Brother machine, the whole role reversal that is happening now. And now for the first time, there are a lot of new things to be observed here. A, classic case of augmentation. B, I was surprised, I spent the last 2 months in the US and I was surprised to see many of the Uber drivers, they were actually doing multiple jobs. They used to drive only for 2 to 3 hours a day. Otherwise, they are running some startups or they are marketing professionals. It was extremely impressive. And I told myself, maybe Saturday, Sunday, I should be driving an Uber as well. No harm in that. Maybe I can drive an Uber and, educate my passengers on some good stuff. At least that's the value I add. Look, started in India also. So what you are able to see from the Uber example is the future of work, where you are augmented with machines. You can't be an Uber driver without a machine. As simple as that. Can you be an Uber driver without the Uber machine? You cannot. So suddenly, they upskill you. With that machine, you get your next ride. Where to ride. You get all the information you need. Everything is. You have to be the friend of the machine. If you are not comfortable with the machine, you cannot be an Uber driver. And you can take that example as the future of work. If you are a regulator, I'm sorry to say the same thing is going to happen to you. RegTech is penetrating the regulation space in a big way, both for the regulators, the protected. I recently submitted a paper to the World Government Summit on how RegTech is changing the lives of the regulators. So the regulators will be augmented with all these insights and information. Those new age regulations will be very different. You have to catch up with all these digital companies that actually work in the space where there is no regulation. So there are a lot of interesting things here. You can see the whole dynamics of man and machine, the data that I was talking about, and more importantly, how many Uber drivers were there in India 4 years back? None. These are the kind of new skills or new jobs that these technologies will create. Some jobs will die. Maybe the yellow taxi cabs are less today, but the new age jobs will come. You could have been totally illiterate if you were a what you call Kali Pili driver or taxi driver, but today you need some basic amount of education, literacy, and digital literacy, so that you can understand the systems, you can interact with them. So that's a very good example of the future of work and the role of mind and machine. Just give me a signal that the empowerment of women, for example. I put the figures here saying why empowerment of women makes business sense. For example, incremental annual GDP impact in 2025 by McKinsey Global Institute, $28 trillion, right? So it's not just a good feeling that we need to empower women. In addition to that, is the fact that this is good for the society, for the economy. And then what are the big challenges women have today? There are multiple. They need a safe place. They need, if you go to schools, you will see they drop out early. I have been working with some non-profits like Child in Need Institute, and I've seen that many of the girl childs, they can't finish schools, they drop out, or they are given in marriage at a very early age. They end up having children even before they're adults, and this is not 1%, 2%, a huge percentage of our population, this is what is happening, and in worst cases, they are human trafficked. So, and even in the urban areas, if you see women in the workforce, in the colleges, we are almost in equal percentage maybe, but the moment you enter your workforce, as you grow up the ladder, the population, the percentage of women starts falling, because there's no societal support for their profession or the career, and the women at the top has been so low. The number of percentage is not a reflection of the capability, but it's a reflection of the opportunity not being there for them to grow, right? So it's not just school dropout, it's college dropout, it's job dropout. Everywhere there's an issue, right? So I had this opportunity, me and my lab, we have worked with the Child in Need Institute. We did this work called G-Power, which in the first year alone saved 200 girl child from trafficking. But what I want to really point out is power of the new age technology. Why is this example very important? Traditionally, our computer systems have been deterministic. How do you write programs? If this, then this, else this. Yes, if this is happening, then this will happen, else that will happen. Okay? But social problems are not deterministic. Social problems are very wicked problems. You cannot say like the reason people are poor is because they are not educated. There can be only one reason. There can be multiple reasons, and these are wicked problems. They feed into each other. So you need a very different approach to solve or to model this kind of problems, and that's where AI becomes very handy. So AI is all about probabilistic modeling, and we used all these ontologies. We built a 42 attribute model for Child in Need Institute. For the first time, they were able to now associate probability that a girl child is vulnerable to school dropout or early marriage or even human trafficking. So that's the power of these new technologies, which earlier was difficult. What happened? Okay. The other part of so we are now into this territory of the inclusive world, right? We discussed about employment, we discussed about women who are also, in some sense, they get marginalized. And then you have this huge population of the elderly as well as people who are having some form of impairment, vision, speech, for example. And, how do you make them productive in the workplace? How do you build systems which the blind can use for, and I just have to check whether I have my internet connectivity, then I can actually show you a very cool demo. I guess I don't, but if I have my internet connectivity, I can just show you a cool demo of the work we did for the people who are blind with the National Association for Blind in India. So for people who, I don't think there's connectivity here for me, so, okay, anyway, we'll skip this. So people who are blind, they are, when we worked with National Association for Blind for almost 4 to 6 months, we realized that blind people are not always necessarily totally blind. At least people like us who don't have this issue, we feel that blind people can't see anything. Blindness is a whole spectrum of blindness. Some of them can see a little bit, some of them can see shadows, So we learned a lot about the lifestyles, about the challenges, about the fact that post the demonetization, they could no longer understand what currency they were holding. They were always used to the older currency, right? And then we worked with National Association for Blind. We brought in AI, which is like computer have eyes. And with this AI, in fact, one of the versions we have is also linked to their phone, their smart glasses. So for the first time, and then we brought in face recognition technology, which is very powerful. Now you're having it in a cell phone, but in fact, you can do face recognition now with one image. If I get one image of a person, I can start recognizing. It becomes so powerful. So for the first time, the people in the National Association of Blind, we created a solution with Drishti. They were able to tell whether, for example, the spouse has entered the room. If she's not talking, or there are 3-4 people in the room, they can know whether one of the family members is there. If they're in the office, they can know how many people are around them. Who are these people? Is my boss near me? Is my friend near me? So the scenario description of the world around you, gender, the sex of the person, face recognition, OCR, they can just take the cell phone and it can read out everything around them. They can use it to read the newspaper, right? So all these technologies have become so powerful that people love it. They can just, when we built the solution, the first thing they did was they took out money from their pocket and they tried to see whether they are getting shortchanged or not. Is this, what note is this? So these technologies we deployed with some of the blind people who are in banks and professionals, and it has kind of gone global. But these technologies are becoming so powerful that you see more of them. I actually have it in my cell phone, but it needs internet connectivity, and it's not having a connectivity right now, because it could have described this whole room if I just click. That's a very powerful technology. So that was about Drishti, and this is something we did in Pune just last month. And I have a video, and what I will do is I'll ask them to play the video, This is in Pune. There is a school for the hearing impaired, for the deaf, Red Cross School. And the challenge we had was, can we bring music in the lives of children who cannot hear sound? And it's a very nice use of technology and haptics, which is the vibration, the feel. So typically what the deaf children do is, when they are dancing, they either look at the instructor, or they feel the speakers like this with their hand, to figure out the vibration.
Can they dance if they can't hear music? Tech and Accenture Labs is enabling the hearing impaired to transform music into vibrations and dance in unison.
In Accenture Lab, we take great pride in mentoring young women entrepreneurs in technology. And I have here two amazing women entrepreneurs who run Tech, this wearable device, and we have been working with them using our research in artificial intelligence, in haptics and wearables.
Watch is a wearable for people with hearing impairment to improve their lives. And we are very excited to have technology support and software mentorship from Accenture Labs.
Dance is a feature in the Watch that provides haptic feedback to the user through vibrations in sync with the beat. Earlier, beat patterns had to be manually extracted and programmed for each song, thereby limiting the number of songs available. Accenture Labs helped enhance the Watch solution with dynamic extraction of rhythm from music, opening up a whole new world of music and dance for the hearing impaired.
Our intelligent haptic solution extracts beats from the songs that are relevant to dance.
You got the idea. What we did here is, with AI, if there's any new song, you can just extract out intelligently the beats from the song and make it available to the children who dance. So these children, when they practice, and it's coordinated, so all the children, they wear those watches, they get the haptic feel of each of the beats with which they dance, right? Dance is a very essential element for the hearing impaired to give them confidence, right? It's very liberating for them. Just imagine in a world where there's no sound, and they can see people dancing, and they feel like dancing to that music. So for them, in fact, the school does a lot of good work in teaching children how to dance, and this particular device, for example, is very helpful for them. Education. So again, education is a big business. I spoke about how MOOCs and all are really revolutionizing education. In fact, the reason why education is even more important is, as I mentioned, there's a rapid need to skill and reskill, right? For all the students here, believe me, once you're out there in the world, you will be studying even more than what you're studying today, right? But everyday things are changing. And how do you study fast? How do you study rapidly now? AI again plays a big role there. So if you look at the MOOCs, for example, there's a whole concept of adaptive learning. Because if four of us try to read a subject, suppose me and Sandeep try to suddenly decide to study AI, the learning path for me is very different from Sandeep. Or if me and Sandeep try to read about the latest in banking, the learning path for me is very different from that of Sandeep. So AI systems can adapt the path, your learning path to you. And that's all about adaptive learning, right? You can adapt the learning path so that you can learn faster. Otherwise, earlier it was like, irrespective of who you are, you have to follow the same steps. And the other thing is the micro-learning concept, where you teach people with nuggets of information, and small bits of information, so that they're able to absorb it very well. Now, the work we did in this case was much more fundamental. So many of you might be aware of an NGO called Sanjay Podder. Now, all this learning business is great, but imagine being in a in this room, I hope most of you had your breakfast. If you didn't have your breakfast, you would not have been listening to me at all. And that's what happens every single day in schools in India, where students come in rural areas or students from less privileged areas. They come to the classroom without having breakfast. There is no food at home. And then we tell them study, right? And I think the best thing about Akshay Patra was they made that the mission. They said, no children should be deprived of education because of hunger, and they run the midday meal scheme today in India. They feed 1.6 million children every single day across 13,000 schools. So when Akshay Patra CEO and we were chit-chatting, they have already been profiled in all the big Discovery Channel for running the mega kitchens of the world, highly automated, right? And he said, Sanjay, we have scale. Even if you can save 1 paise of my meal cost, and meal cost around 8 rupees, 1 paise, I can feed 4,200 more children. So then, we in the lab, we scratched our head and said, what's the value of all this exponential technologies if we can't reduce 1 paise? And we defined a project called the Million Meals Project. So we promised Akshay Patra that we'll try it out in 3 of their kitchens in Bangalore, all this exponential technology, and can we at least generate 1 million meals more in the whole year for you? He said, okay, that's a try, let's give it a try. And what I really want to show is a video of what we did in Akshay Patra and what happened at the end of this project. And it will also give you a good insight on what I am talking about, the combinatorial power of technology. How all these technologies come together.
India is the second most populous country in the world, with a population of over 1.2 billion people. It is also one of the fastest growing economies and has the youngest workforce in the world. But at the same time, India currently ranks a lowly 97 of 118 countries on the Global Hunger Index. Every year, billions are spent for combating malnutrition. Yet, every day, 3,000 children die in India due to hunger. Akshay Patra, one of the world's largest NGOs, has been at the forefront of addressing this epidemic in India. Through the Tech for Good initiative by Accenture Labs, we act as force multipliers for organizations that work for the greater good of society. With this focus, we are helping Akshay Patra expand its outreach and help them feed more children across the country.
Akshay Patra is a strategic school meal program with a vision that no child in India will be deprived of education because of hunger. We are currently feeding 1.5 million children in over 13,000 schools in the country. Our country has a unique problem, though at one end we have growth happening in a big manner, at the other end we have 30% of the world's malnourished children are based in India. So we are trying to tackle this so the child will get a healthy meal and come to school and get a good education.
With its midday meal scheme in government schools and government-aided schools, Akshay Patra has served over 2 billion meals since its operations began in the year 2000.
Mega Kitchen is a complex industrial environment, and we used human-centered design to cut through the complexity and bring in diverse technologies like machine learning, IoT, blockchain, and enterprise mobility to address key friction points and make the technology disappear, resulting in a seamless cooking process and that is rapid, repeatable and reliable. Our aim is simple: to help Akshay Patra feed more children by enabling them and empowering them through the right set of technologies.
We certainly believe that technology can further help us in all the operations that we're doing in kitchen, in the fleet management, in the logistics, in the field operations, everywhere. So we certainly believe there are many areas which we can improve, because every area that we improve, all the efficiencies that we bring in to the operations will help us save money, and money means more children can be fed under this program.
By looking for delays, wastage, underutilization of equipment, errors, and a lack of real-time visibility, we identified areas in Akshay Patra's operations, from sourcing to deployment, that can be further optimized, automated, and streamlined. We start by analyzing the daily demand for meals. A location-aware and machine intelligence system helps predict the demand requirement for each school each day. We then automate data collection and collation, enhancing its efficiency. Next, our solution aims to increase the efficiency of cooking more than 15 recipes. State-of-the-art IoT-based temperature monitoring reduces the cook-to-consumption time. It also saves valuable resources in the process for Akshaya Patra. Lastly, we worked on an essential part of Akshaya Patra's operations, invoicing and audits. Our solution is based on data trust, creating trust networks to ensure accurate reporting and invoicing. The information required for audits, like feedback from the school, is shared via blockchain, enabling a high degree of transparency with all the stakeholders.
We always talk about artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, but using this technology.
So what you really saw here was an interplay of AI, IoT, and blockchain. Akshaya Patra feeds 30,000 schools. How do they really predict how much to cook the next day? What kind of food has to be sent where? Can you learn from all the data they have? For the first time with the sensors, and interestingly, we built the sensors in India, we were able to, the kitchen workers, they were not automated out, but they were augmented with the smartphones, and they could actually see at what stage they need to add the masalas, the ingredient into the food, right? So they don't have to really peek into those huge cauldrons. They can do it just the way the Uber car driver drives the car, the kitchen personnel can cook the food. And blockchain, extremely useful because, as I said earlier, it is an internet of trust, very useful where there are multiple stakeholders and there may be an inherent lack of trust between them. So when you use a blockchain and the school principal gives a feedback that the food has arrived and it was of the right quality, it's in the blockchain. The supply chain guy from Akshaya Patra says, I have reached, I have delivered, it is in the blockchain. So when key activities are all, the proof of work is in the blockchain, and this system nobody owns. It's not another system, it's not a school system, it is like internet, it's a system, it's a global database. You suddenly, the need for audit goes down significantly because these are, and you saw the beacons, right? So a lot of this data collection happens automatic. The supply chain guy really has to go to the school. Only when he's in front of the beacon will the blockchain trigger a block, right? So you can see, you can reimagine the processes. And what really happened here was we ended up increasing the efficiency of Akshaya Patra by 20%, which is much bigger than what we had targeted. And now the next goal is to see how, we can help them to do with other kitchens as well, with help of the community and everything else, right? So it's very important to see what these technologies can do for us. In the interest of time, I will just skip food and agriculture, but we did some, the small holding farmers in India, they need technology, and there's a huge business opportunity there, as well as, you have all these farmer suicides happening and this and that. How can you enable them with technology so that the crop failures are lower, or they can take the right decision, right? Environment, this is the work we did this year, in fact, with the Bombay Natural History Society. A very good example of the use of artificial neural network. So using convolutional neural network, people who are nature enthusiasts, they can go and check out the Internet of Birds. It is a citizen science program, and people from across India and across the globe, in fact, they keep giving data about birds they have encountered. And this ANN system, the artificial neural network based system, learns and now it's able to predict any bird. So in the next phase, what you really see is, if you are a kid or anybody who is interested in nature, you just go, you see something, you click a bird, it tells you everything about the bird. It identifies in real time and says, this one's a bird. Because many of the people in this room may be aware of about 4 or 5 birds in India. the crow, the pigeon, the parrot, the peacock. But India actually has 1,300 species of birds. Okay, so we are one of the most biodiverse part of the globe. So technology can be used for a lot of interesting things like this. Health, again, I will very quickly go through this. There's a global shift happening from illness to wellness, because the reason people are dying nowadays is not because of communicable diseases, because of non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension, and all these diseases can be prevented. In other words, you need to have a lot of focus on wellness and not just illness. And only then the pressure from our healthcare systems will go away. And for the first time, this is possible because of big data, AI, the cloud. If you look at what's happening globally for the future of healthcare, people are connecting the healthcare data to the welfare data. For example, if a lot of people are falling sick from a particular locality, one can then make a correlation and say, okay, they don't really have a sanitation. Let's connect these guys to the Swachh Bharat program. Maybe they need better sanitation there, otherwise a lot of people from there are having similar kind of issues. Or involving the community to educate people and prevent them from falling sick by monitoring their health and giving them the right advice. So a lot of things happening in that space powered with technology, right? And the remote patient monitoring, this is very interesting, we did it in India. It's all about not occupying the expensive ICU beds. So once you're out, these are like cheap sensors, but they can monitor your vital parameters 24/7. You go home and the doctor still knows what's happening to you, if he cares about it, but you get that. Financial inclusion, you all are experts in this area, but when I've been working with the Grameen Foundation in India towards financial literacy, and Grameen Foundation, and all this work I have shown, these are pro bono work, these are not commercial projects we do, these are our way of giving back to the society, so these are all pro bono with non-profits. So when Grameen Foundation approached us and I was talking to the CEO and I said, what is your biggest problem you want to solve? He said, Sanjay, we really don't have the supply side problem, we have a demand side problem. And I want you to help us see how we can do better financial literacy, educate people, find out the friction in their mind, why are they not taking or adopting microcredit, for example, and how can technology help? And this has been one of the very interesting projects we have done, because what we really did here was use for the first time a couple of technologies in India. One we did was, and this is scary, emotion AI. So emotion AI, just from your facial expressions and your voice tonal quality, I can predict very accurately your feelings towards a particular topic. So so two interesting observations happened. We originally intended to examine the discussion with the people in the villages to figure out what is in their mind, why are they having that friction in their mind, which areas need to be addressed. But we also observed that we have to use it first on the business correspondent, the field workers, and use it for training them. Because when we use that technology on the field worker, we realized many of them were communicating the products to the customer in such a pathetic way, if I may use the word, that nobody will be impressed. So the first thing is educate the field workers, the community workers, the business correspondent, use it for training them so that they sound convincing, right? And then use it, you can even use it to understand what are the friction points in the minds of the customer. But the other area that I really found was very interesting was, for the first time we used conversational agent, because we found that forget financial literacy, people were not literate, right? So if you give them a brochure, they cannot read. What can you do about that? So we created a Hindi speaking bot for Grameen, Hindi and Marathi. So you can converse like Siri. You can say, मुझे भीम के बारे में बताइए, मुझे माइक्रो क्रेडिट के बारे में बताइए. It talks to you. It can have a dialogue with you. And the other feature it has is augmented reality. You take that app over any brochure, the conversational agent understands what is there, and then because you can't read the brochure, it starts talking to you. Even if you cannot read, you can still convey the information, right? So the whole app is conversation based. So a lot of these new AI technologies that play, emotion AI play, and with Grameen in India, this is a work. We did a recent pilot in Lucknow. I have a video here, but I think in shortage of time, I will not go through that. And from possibilities to responsibility, this is a whole area by itself, but I just wanted to touch upon this. So I just spoke last 1 hour on possibilities. But this brings a whole area of responsibility that as regulators who protect, you need to be aware of, the civil society needs to be aware of, businesses needs to be aware of, because a lot of these things are self-regulated there. There's a lack of regulation. There's a gap between regulation and innovation. You can see that the scale is tipping the other way. The humans controlling machine, and slowly the machines have started controlling the humans, right? And we need to have the proper digital social contract, the proper point where we regulate what people do with this data. One of the biggest risks we have in countries like India is we are still not sensitized to the power of data. We may hear words like data is a new oil and this and that, but vast amount, and that's the reason maybe people are fighting the Supreme Court over Aadhaar. Vast amount of data, they just float around, which if it falls in the wrong hands, can really create havoc in the system, right? So this technology is neither good nor bad. Technology can be good only if we steer it that way. So that brings the responsibility element, right? So things like, we had this news about Volkswagen. They were playing with the data and changing the emission data, for example, right? So the algorithmic biases you can create, you have to watch out for that. You can create machine learning biases, because if you train with only a certain type of data, the machines, for example, recently there was a Wired magazine article that said, every time you feed a photograph of a colored person, the system said it's a gorilla. Now why? Because the system was trained with only white people as human beings. Right? So if you train a system, it only gives a Caucasian male or female as a human being, and then you feed an image of somebody who doesn't look like them, the system gets confused. So there is a learning bias. So you have to watch out for learning bias, you have to watch out for algorithmic bias, you have to watch out for data privacy issues, data protection issues, collect data which you can protect. So all this, I think one of the big things happening in this space is in Europe, with GDPR. And I think it's only a matter of time countries like India and others will also adopt it. You cannot use AI to give recommendation of things you cannot explain. So that is the whole area of explainable AI. You cannot say this is the insurance package best for you. The regulations mandate that you explain why, and that's a big challenge with AI today, because a lot of the techniques within AI, like deep learning, though they're extremely powerful, they are magical. The human beings cannot know why the system is recommending in that way. As I told you earlier, it's not deterministic. The complex vectorized representation of data. So the conclusion you know, but you don't know why the system is telling you to do that. And if you as a insurer have to explain, you have a problem, So there will be a lot of research in that space, for example. So these are a lot of the new responsibilities that we need to be aware of. Other thing I need to call out here is, it's always easy to do these projects at a small scale and be successful. But when you try to use technology at scale, I know you need to get all the big players together. You need the right regulation. Try flying a drone to data. Is Bitcoin legal or illegal? Only God knows. I don't think even government knows. So that is a huge issue about regulations, because government is trying its best to take help of public-private partnership to bridge that gap, and then the role of the business, and then you cannot dump all this technology on the bottom of the pyramid for which you are trying to build an inclusive world. They don't have the capacity to absorb it. And that's where the non-profits come into play. You have to work very closely with them to make sure these technologies can have the desired impact. It's like, for example, a good example in your context would be you suddenly dump Bhim UPI on people who are not even literate in rural India. You know, can you dump it that way? You need to have a whole mechanism so that they are able to adopt that technology. Somebody is educating them. They are warned of not sharing their ATM passwords. Right? So there's a huge amount of work required to be done there as well. A lot of stuff happening in India. I think you all are very much aware of the Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobile, the Digital India program, Bhim. You know, the government is very active in this space. There are a lot of non-profit startups emerging. There are a lot of startup ecosystem accelerators in India. India is one of the most vibrant startup ecosystem in the world after the US, UK, and Israel. You know, there is a focus now in the mind of government to scale up the impact of public-private partnership. So a lot of these things happening. This is a kind of a roadmap, but you know, I guess I'm really over time, and before Sandeep throws me out of the stage, you know, I just want to say thank you, Sandeep, for this time. And I think we'll carry back a little bit more understanding of what's happening this year. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So let me say in short, Sanjay, it's a pleasure having you here. The time you spent with us and showed us the possibilities which is happening in this space of technology, digital, AI, is just phenomenal. And I wanted people at NISM to be exposed to what is happening in the globe, in the world, and what we in the country are already doing in the different spaces. So some of the things which he mentioned, of course, I am only taking one big takeaway, that maybe after 4 months I would prefer to be a Uber driver. So that's a big takeaway. But I must say that this huge spectrum of activities which you just now communicated to the audience is something which we would love to absorb in NCFE. And we are also facing a very large challenge, and that is we don't have problem of content, we don't have problem of resource, but we have problem of communicating it to this huge mass of people. And some of the things which you are doing with Grameen Foundation may be something that of that type, and I would request NCFE to be in touch with your researchers and with the lab to take this message forward. So thank you very much for spending this time. We are running over time, but I wanted this to be an open session. Sanjay has been able to communicate maybe 20% of what he wanted to communicate, and it would require one full day's activity to absorb. And luckily we have the advantage of breakfast and lunch to absorb it. But because we have too much of it, we sometimes don't absorb it to the extent which we should. So thank you very much, Sanjay, and let me on behalf of NCFE give you a small token of our appreciation, which is again some work which we do with the tribal art people, and we would like to we'll get into the next session immediately and would request Sanjay to be with us for the next 35-40 minutes when we have two country presentations.